So welcome back everybody to another masterclass here. So this week, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about set 9.5. So this is going to be an introduction to set 9.5, everything you need to know about the units, items, just systematic changes. There's a lot of things that are removed, modified, and added. This patch is going to be on 13.18, so that's the scheduled live patch for the new sets. I think it's coming out September 10th or September 12th. One of those 2 days, sometime around there, so it is coming up soon. So hopefully this information will help all of you out. Okay, so without further ado, let's get on to it. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about some major changes, just systematic changes. Then we're going to get more into the nitty gritty. So units, traits, items, and region portals. A lot of these have been removed. A lot are added as new additions, and a lot are modified. And then the last but not least, we're going to set you up with some successful comps and legends to play in order to help you top 4 those first 5 games. If you're playing ranked, if you're just playing for fun, then just help you win and enjoy the sets. And yeah, let's get into it. So an introduction to set 9.5, as you see right away, Gangplank is here. He is the new 5 cost units, and he is going to be replacing Senna. So super cool unit. We'll talk about it later. First off, let's talk about any systematic changes. So basically they kind of reclassed or reworked items. There's now 4 classes of items that they've categorized. The first one is core items. So core are things that you can build from components. So just think of these like regular items, any Rage Blade, Warmogs, just things you can build. Radiant are going to be radiant versions of your core items. So for example, like Radiant Rage Blade, you can still get this from like augments or from Piltover cash out, so still achievable, nothing changed there. Next one is artifact items. So these used to be called Ornn artifacts. They're basically just Ornn items. Ornn items changed a little bit. I think the biggest change that they've added for this is they added some of the shimmer scale items. So this is the Goldmancer staff and the moguls. So they added both of these into the Ornn artifact items, and they're actually considered as Ornn items now. So if you take Ornn and you go your portable forge, you have a chance of seeing Goldmancer and moguls. And the last one is the big one, so support items. So it's about this point here, so any of the supportive or like cheese items that we could build in set 9, so we're making those last minute Zephyrs, making those last minute Shrouds, all that is changed. So now you can no longer craft these items, so you can't make your Zephyr, you can't make Shroud, you also can't place Zephyr or Shroud halfway through a round, so no more of that like last minute cheese. That's changed. So now these are called support items. You can get support items from augments. So most of the time these will come in the form of training dummies. So there's some augments, I forget what it's called, but basically it gives you a training dummy that you could place. So great, some extra frontline, and it's holding some support items. So like your chalices or your Zephyrs or your Shroud, even like your ZZ Rod is also considered a support item. And then it boosts your board from there. So they've added a ton of support items. We'll talk about that later in the support in the item section. And then the last major change they did is there's new traits, and with new traits come new portals. So there's 2. The first one is Bilgewater. Very good trait right now. You can play it vertical, you play it mixed, and Gangplank is Bilgewater. So we'll talk about what that is. And last one is Ixtal. Also really cool trait, we'll talk about that later, but essentially there's 3 new portals for each one of these traits, and it's pretty cool. So this is the essential major system changes. We're now going to move on to the unit and the trait changes. So as you see here, Silkle from Arcane. Here we go. So these are the removed units and traits. I've categorized them for these to be 1 cost, 2 costs, 3 costs, still 3 costs. Technically this is 4, but you know, 4 and then 5. So we'll start from the left. So Maokai's gone, and Tristana's gone, and Viego's gone. So right off the bat, you're no longer have the option of doing those Tristana rerolls. No more like Kale reroll with like Bastion frontline. All these are gone. In the second row here, we have 2 of our Slayers gone. So Kled is gone and Zet is gone. Teemo is also gone. So you see here the Yordle trait has been removed. So Yordle's gone. Callista, one of the most strong units of last set, she is now removed. So no more saving so much HP mid game just from having a Rage Blade Callista. Along with Akshan is gone, and Lissandra, along with Garen as well. So basically, a lot of these like main champions are gone, but a lot of them have been replaced. So we'll talk about on the next slide. Just other really big units that are gone. So Lux was a stable in the sorcerer comp, so she's been replaced. And Zeri, who is like the main contender of the gunner comp, is gone as well. And last but not least, the only 5-cost unit that has been removed this set is Senna. And as I mentioned earlier, she's been replaced with Gangplank. Traits that are gone, so Shadow Isles is no longer here, Yordle is no longer here, and Deadeye is no longer here. And you might be wondering, wow, Deadeye is no longer here, but only one Deadeye has been removed. So what about Ash? What about Jin? What about Aphelios? I guess you will find out later. Okay, new units and traits, same thing. So like 1 cost, 2 costs, 3 costs, 4 costs. This is also 4, and then 5 costs. So new traits and units. I won't be going over each one of their abilities, maybe later in the comps, but it's just too much, and this is an intro. But basically for 1 cost, we have Milio, we have Alawi, and we have Graves. All new units. Basically, Milio is backline, Alawi is frontline, and Graves is a rogue, so he's like an assassin, melee assassin with a range of 1. The second one, so this is Nefari. I'm still not sure how to say the name. They just came out in League of Legends, and they're making their appearance in TFT, so pretty cool. She's a challenger, mostly played in challenger Shurima comps. Kiana is our first, or technically our second Ixtal champion. Milio is also an Ixtal, and Kiana is used in rogues as well. Twisted Fate, AP carry, as you might have guessed. Okay, moving on to here. So Quinn is our 3-cost Demacia unit. 80 damage. She does physical damage. These are also 3 costs, so Misfortune and Nico. And moving on to our 4 costs, so we have a lot of 4 costs this set. So we have 5 new ones, including Silco, who is not actually a champion, but is a unit in TFT. So we have Nyla, we have Fiora, we have Silco, Zaya, and Mordekaiser. Each one of these are carry champions, so there's no just like frontline tank. Technically, Silco is more of a supportive champion, but all 4 of these are carry, which means you want damage items on them. They're able to carry your board and really output a lot for your team. And then the last one is Gangplank. Gangplank is both a supportive and damage unit. His ult, similar to Senna, is again almost going to hit the entire board. He's going to remove any debuff, so like any it's basically crowd control, and give everyone attack speed. So it's like kind of similar to Senna, but also does a lot of damage, hence the half support, half damage. And then for our new traits, so this one is Bilgewater. It kind of looks like a pirate, like themed with a snake. So that's how you think about it. It's like a dagger, so it's Bilgewater. This one is Ixtal. So I know these symbols, it might take a while to learn, especially, well, that happened for me too. If you see one of these emblems on the carousel and you're like, oh, what is this? So it'll take a while to learn. This one is Ixtal, not much to describe it. It kind of looks like an upside down umbrella. This is just the trait that Gangplank has. I think it's called Reaver King, which allows him to be placed in the front line or the back line, changing his ability. So this is not an actual like trait to worry about, but that is what it looks like. It's like pirate hat. And the very last one is Vanquisher. So earlier, you might have been thinking like, oh, so many Deadeyes are gone, or are still here, but the trait is gone. A lot of the Deadeyes have been changed to Vanquishers, and Vanquishers, basically anyone who's a Vanquisher just has a built-in Infinity Edge or a built-in Jewel Gauntlet. Their ability is able to crit, and they get additional crits depending on how many Vanquishers you play. So those are the new units and the new traits. We're now talking about the modified units. So this is basically more of like what's changed. So as I was saying, a lot of these Deadeyes have moved over to Vanquishers. So Jin, Ash, they're now Vanquishers. Aphelios is kind of replacing Zeri. So with Deadeye being gone, he has been changed to a Gunner. Darius is a new Vanquisher, so he is now Noxus, Juggernaut, and Vanquisher. So this means, well, technically Infinity Edge was never that great on Darius, but now he has a built-in Infinity Edge, so make sure, definitely don't build Infinity Edge on Darius. Rek'Sai is now a Slayer. Slayer has a good amount of changes, and we'll talk about that, I think, on the next slide. And the very last one is Heimerdinger. Yordle is removed, just because Yordle is not a trait anymore. Okay, we're gonna talk about now about the traits. So Vanquisher is the first one I'll talk about. Um, you don't have to read all of it. Basically, it is what, as I described, it's a built-in like crit function. Is basically Jeweled Lotus. Anyone that has Vanquisher activated has they now have a chance to crit with their abilities, and then they gain additional crit strike chance and crit strike damage depending on your 2, 4, or 6. Next one is Bilgewater. So the way Bilgewater works, when you first read it, you might be a little bit confused. It's like, oh, it marks enemies, it deals a percentage of damage, then they're struck by cannonball. Basically, as the Bilgewater units attack, based off of how much damage they do, then a cannonball, when the cannonball hits, like they'll attack, and then 2 seconds later a cannonball will hit the target they're attacking, and then it'll do a flat amount of damage, so either like 200, 300, 500 plus a percentage of the damage that you dealt. So it's basically like a pure damage trait. Something to note is this is physical damage. So when you are playing Bilgewater, make sure to either have a Last Whisper or an Evan Shroud, which is a new item. We'll talk about that in the items. But Evan Shroud, Belt, and Cloak is basically, it's replacing like the Zephyr build path. It's basically a physical damage version of Ionic Spark. So regardless, make sure you have some form of Sunder when you're playing Bilgewater. And then last one, Ixtal. So Ixtal is going to change every game. It's like the new mutant or the new weather. Its effect will change different or every game. So technically this is just one of the effects. This is the fire effect, but basically they're going to start spawning hexes. Every player will have the same Ixtal each game because it's like lobby wide, and also the hex will be the same as well. So once you play 2 Ixtal, you'll get 1 hex with this like ability based off of the game, and then once you play 3 Ixtal, you'll have 2 hexes, and then the 4th one basically just ramps up the effect of the Ixtal. So in this case it's fire, sometimes it won't be. So make sure to read what the Ixtal is. If this is your like entire board, and this is like the players over here, and your shop is here, the Ixtal reading will be this little icon. So make sure you take a look at this, check out what the element is, and that will affect your gameplay. Okay, so that is the new traits. Now I'll talk about the modified ones. So Slayer used to be, I think, it was a 2, 4, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there was no, the breakpoints were all like by 1s, but now it's by 2s. So it's 2, 4, and 6. Just because there's so many Slayers now that you're very easily able to fit them in. The next one is Noxus. Noxus used to be a 369. Now it's a 3579. So it's a lot easier to fit in like higher versions of Noxus. Shurima, the biggest one is now with 2, you're able to activate Shurima. So before it was 3, you needed at least 3 Shurima, but now only with 2 Shurima, you're able to activate Shurima. And that opens up a lot of possibilities with just playing Azir and Nasus, the 4-cost strongest Shurimas. So we'll talk about that later. It's now a 2, 4, 6, 9. Big jump from 6 all the way up to 9 Shurima, but it is a big bonus. And then the second last one, there's one more I want to talk about, but the second last one is Freljord. So Freljord, this is actually 30%, I think, as of today. Freljord stays about the same, but instead of 2, 3, 4 is just 2, 3. And you get that, you get the Sunder and the Shred just from having 2, and Freljord 3 gives you that stun. So the Mana Reave is gone, it's now just the Shred, Sunder, and the stun. And they removed Lysandra, so it's only Ashe and Sejuani who are the Freljords. And the very last one is Invoker. Basically, they just added an 8 Invoker trait. It basically just gives everyone so much more mana, 40 mana to everyone, and then 40 additional ability power. So that is a vertical that you might want to chase. But these are the 3 new traits, and then these are the modified ones. I'd say the biggest one out of all of these to look out for is this Shurima 2. I'm still getting used to only playing like 2 Shurima and then having to select 1 to ascend, but make sure make sure you know that it is now 2 and no longer 3. Okay, so those were the units and the traits. We're gonna move on to the items now. So some of these, if you play League of Legends, you might recognize this. If you don't, then don't worry. But if you play League, it is a little bit more transferable to this, but I will still explain everything in depth. This is a very helpful schematic that Teamfight Tactics released. I can send a picture of this in the voice chat after of this channel. and you can take a look. But basically, it just shows your categories. So your core, your support, and your Ornn artifacts. Radiant is just Radiant version of the core, so they didn't include that. But these are all of your core items, things that you can build just from your components in the game. Support are items that you will get from your like training dummy augments or anything. And then artifact is now your Ornn augments. And yes, Goldmancer and Moguls, as I see in the chat, are Ornn items now. So you can get this and start making some money early. Something to note is they were nerfed a little bit. I think the Mogul stats were nerfed. And then also Goldmancer now only goes up to 30 gold in order to give that bonus AP. So make sure that you are aware of these changes. Okay. So this is just like showing all the items in general. I'll talk about the new core items. So first off, Sterk's Gauge. This replaces Zeke's, so it is sword and belt. This is really good on melee AD champion units. Basically, once they get to 60% health, they're going to get an increase of max health and extra attack damage. So units like Fiora, Graves, Kiana use these super well. They're melee, which means they're up right in the face of the enemy. They're taking damage, they're able to proc this easy, and they do physical damage, so attack damage is great on them. Night Harvester is the next one. It's replacing Shroud. Night Harvester is a pure damage item. You deal bonus damage right off the bat. I think this is now actually 12 as of today, or as of recently. And then you get increased damage once you're below 60% health. So it's kind of similar to Sterk's once you get to 60% health and effect happens, but instead of extra health and attack damage, you just get bonus overall damage. Evan Shroud, as I mentioned earlier, is basically just the physical damage or AD version of Shroud, or not Shroud, of Spark. So instead of shredding nearby enemies, you're just sundering nearby enemies. I will say I'm a bit disappointed. Evan Shroud is technically slightly worse than Ionic Spark, because Ionic Spark at least zaps enemies when they use their ability based off their max mana. Evan Shroud purely just has the sunder, but to make up for it, they are granted a little bit of extra armor and magic resist for the first 10 seconds of combat. So this can bypass Last Whisper. I remember, and yeah, it could bypass Last Whisper. And then the next one, Adaptive Helm, it is replacing Chalice. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention Evan Shroud replaces like Zephyr. Adaptive Helm replaces Chalice, and it's a very flexible item. The holder can either be in the front 2 rows or the back 2 rows. If they're in the front 2 rows, they just get a little bit of AP and some resist. And if they're in the back 2 rows, they get a lot more AP and they gain mana every 3 seconds. So super flexible item. You can use that for everyone and everywhere. And then the second last one, Crown Guard. This will replace Lockets. Combat start, it's going to shield the holder based off of their max health, and then once the shield breaks or expires, they gain ability power. So you want to place, I forgot to mention like what units every one of these go on, but I mentioned for Sterk's, Crown Guard I think is best on units that use magic damage or output and magic damage because of this ability power. To be honest, I've seen like a lot of good usage of this on Jarvan just to allow him to cast twice, but 40 ability power, although it's good, it doesn't give. I think it's good. There's still more to configure about this. I see Katarina. I think it's good on Katarina, but I'm not 100% sure if it's better than her other items. Evan Shroud, you just want to put on any tank, as like you would with Ionic Spark. Adaptive Helm can be on anybody. And then Night Harvester are really good on rogues because the Night Harvester will proc once they're below 60% health, and I think rogue procs when they're at 50% health. Not 100% sure on the numbers, but I do know for sure that this Night Harvester will proc before Rogue, so they'll get that extra damage and then they'll dash to the back line. So it's super good on rogues. And the very last one, there's no schematic for it yet online, but Nash's Tooth, it replaces ZZ Rots. This is like your Azir item. Basically, after you cast a spell, you gain attack speed for 5 seconds. So you want to place this on units on AP or magic damage outputting units that have a low maximum mana, and benefit a lot from attacking very fast. So this basically just has a 0 written all over it. Other units like Misfortune can also unit because she has a very low maximum mana, but there's still more experimenting to do. So a lot of new items, I know, but definitely go on PB and experiment. I'm very happy to play on PB with this group after the lesson as well, but stay tuned for that. Okay, so those are the new items. We're gonna move on to region portals now. So the first one is Bilgewater. As I mentioned, with a new trait, you're going to get 3 new portals. So the first one is Rat Town, the town of the rats. Basically, every so often you're going to get random. They're called lucky shops. So based off of your board's traits, you're just going to get a lucky shop that gives you units that tailor to your board. So if you're playing Noxus, and then bam, Rat Town comes, you will get a ton of Noxus units in your shop. So basically, it just allows you to start up your board a lot easier. Finn's Market is the other one. I believe it is on round 3.7. There's still more to be experimented on this. Maybe they'll change it after the final PB patch. But basically, you will be given either a completed artifact support or radiant item, and it's an armory. So it's not you're just given like a random item. You're given a choice 1 out of 4 to pick. So that's super good. Slaughter Dock is one of the more interesting ones. So starting in stage 2, so not during minions stage 1, you're going to gain free rerolls equal to the stage number +1 at the start of each round, and it could only be used that round. So it's very similar to the Prismatic Augment shopping spree. So for example, if you're in stage 2, so 2-1 has occurred, okay, and then free rerolls is equal to the stage number +1. So you get 3 free rerolls for only that round of 2-1. And then this increases by 1 every time the stage increases. So then 3-1, you'll have 4 free rerolls. Yeah, so it's super good. It helps you to also just star up your board a lot. So a lot of Bilgewater region portals are technically like economy, and they'll just help you like piece together your board. Just to be wary that, of course, everyone will have this effect. So everyone will be piecing their board together, which means that the tempo of the lobby will be higher in these portals. Okay, I see a question here. What does can only be used that round mean? So, okay, so the example is like 2-1. You only get 3 free rerolls, but you could only use those free rerolls during 2-1. Once it gets to 2-2, your free rerolls are gone. So that it's kind of like, yeah, okay, you got it? Awesome. So yeah, so this is the Bilgewater region portals. The next one is Ixtal. So I do not know how to pronounce this name. Ixalcan, I'm not sure, sorry. But basically, this is lobby wide. Every 20 units that are started up throughout the entire lobby, so either like 1 to 2 star or 2 to 3 star, all players will be granted an extra like a loot orb. And then as the game goes on, this loot will increase in value. Second one, Serpentine River. On 2, 5, and 4, 5, there's a democratic system where all the players, they will vote. So it almost goes back to like Carousel. Well, technically it is during the Carousel time, but you'll have your 3 regions to vote again. And then it could be either like health, or it could be gold, or it could be like item components. And then you go pick what you need or what you want. And then it's democratic. I think technically it's not democratic because I think it's still like a chance. So like if 4 players go to health and 4 players go to gold, it's a 50-50. And it goes from there. And the very last one, Cardinal Acrology. Augments will always be presented as silver, gold, then prismatic on 2-1, 3-2, and then 4-2. And then this is what the Ixtal icons look like. Okay, and so those are the new portals. Reworked ones is Immortal Bastion and Stillwater Hold. So Immortal Bastion, they removed the flag mechanic. Basically, it's very super simple. All players will just start with 115 health instead of 100. So what does this mean? It means that it's a lot slower tempo of a game. Rerolling is a lot better. You have more health to spare. Like econing up and then winning out later has a lot more value because you have so much more HP, and HP and gold are inverse resources. So the more HP you save, most of the time you're going to be spending a lot more gold, and the more gold you save, most of the time you'll be losing more HP. Next one, everyone's favorite, Stillwater Hold. They've added a new like components. So basically on 2-1, 3-2, and 4-2, you're just going to get a completed item anvil, and you'll be able to select an extra item from there. That's about it. It just lets everyone get some more items. Economy will still not be as high for everyone because of this lack of actual augments. So make sure that you still have some playable level 7 boards in case you're not win streaking or lose streaking. Okay, so I think we talked about almost everything now. We talked about units, items, the portals. Now let's set you up with some comps to play and some legends to play. Earth, I would say, is probably the best legend right now. Ornn is also good. Poro is also really good. There's no definite one right now, but I would say like one of these three are super good. Let's talk about the one on the left here. So Ixtal Rogues, I would say like this is probably one of the best comps. I beat a 3-star 4-cost Nilo with this board. Just is super strong right now. It might get nerfed, but essentially you only want to play Ixtal Rogue when you have ice or wood as your Ixtal. Ice gives anyone that stands on like the ice hex, they have like a built-in Zhonya's with extra like health recovery, so that's super good, especially if you could get like 2 ices, which is super easy just by playing 3 Ixtal. And then wood is stacking HP every round. Whoever stands on the wood hex, they get additional HP. So these two are super good for Rogue. Just reroll on level 6 for this board. And if you have Rogue Spat, you could play something like a Darius and then add Noxus on 7. You could also do Jinx and then reroll Jinx with Rogue Spat, and then you have Zon pairing with Echo. So plenty of opportunities, but these are the items generally that you want to go. Next one, Bastion of Philios and Silco. So basically it's a super stall comp where you have such a tanky front line. You have a ramping 80 physical damage of Philios, and you have a health drain and burn Silco. So you have AD and AP, so it's makes damage super good. 6 Bastion in the front line, you put your main tank items on Shen, supportive items on Taric. You may give him a Shiv, or not a Shiv, a Spark as well. And yeah, if you have Bastion +1, you drop the Salawi. You can play Jinx for Gunner and Zon, and you're very happy from there. Something to know about Neeko. Neeko can be played as a tank, but she actually does a lot of damage, magic damage. So play her as like a magic damage bruiser instead of a tank. Yeah. Okay, and the very last two, I know there's a lot of information today, but I'll try to sum it up generally after this slide. 6 Ionia Vanquisher, you're basically playing around these main units, so Shen, Nyla, and Xayah. This is mostly an attack damage, physical damage composition. You really need tank lines, or front lines, so Shen 2 super important. Basically allows Nyla to scale. She has an infinite scaling function in her kit, and Xayah to just do damage. It's really good if you have Ionia +1, then you could drop Irelia, give the Ionia spat to Nyla for that extra attack speed, and then play another frontline unit. Make sure that on Xayah you have Deathblade. She will not do a lot of damage without that first like input of attack damage from Deathblade, so make sure you have that. Last Whisper is also really good on her, although her ability sunders already. It's a very low amount, and so Last Whisper is also really good. And then Guardbreaker, because her ability hits like that, so you'll be able to hit a lot of units. Make sure you remember that Vanquisher, it's built-in Jeweled Lotus, so you do not want to be building Infinity Edge on these units. In this case, it's I'll do it in order, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of these have technically like built-in Jeweled Lotus, so you do not want to be building Infinity Edge, but you do want to be building crit items, hence the Last Whisper and the Guardbreaker. Okay, the very last one, it's your first place board. If you want first place, then play this board. However, it's super hard to get to. Not super, it can be hard to get to because it's extremely expensive. It's a stall magic damage composition where you have attack speed items, so your Nashor, Shiv, Ginsu's, Gunblade, Guardbreaker, a mix of this on Azir. And then you have your tank items on your Nasus. You have your blue buff on Cassante, and you're stalling, you're doing a lot of damage, and no one can die. And it's super good. So this is probably one of your best comps. However, this is super cap. So if you have the gold, then you can transition to this. Okay, I think that's everything. So I'll do a quick summary before I go for questions. Okay, so major changes basically is just the rework of items. Remember, core is anything you could build. Radiant is just radiant versions of core. Artifact is just Ornn, and the support items you can no longer build. They'll be given to you in either augments or region portals. I won't go over everyone that were here. Something to note for this is just the change of Deadeye to Vanquishers, and Aphelos now being a gunner. Modified traits is just the new traits. Item changes. These are the ones that you need to think about a little bit more, just because we're not used to building these items. For example, like we never slam locket, but now there are cases where like crown guard can be good. So definitely experiment with this. And yeah, I think that's about it. I will say just experiment a lot if you are playing PB right now, and make sure that if you are looking to play ranked, then make sure that you're prepared for when it drops. I think it's either September 10th or September 12th. But yeah, so good luck for everyone on the new sets.